Hello folks, my name is Shota. I'm a country music artist from Georgia, and I'd like to talk about touring as a musician. Now, I started doing this blog on my channel a few months ago, and I'm sorry I didn't follow up. It was probably October, November last year, but I promise I'll try to be more consistent and I'll talk to you more about touring. And I've been touring a little over a year now because I'm a full-time musician. And there's a bunch of details I could talk to you about, but one video does not cover it. So in my first video, the title is Touring as a Musician, number one, preparation. I talk about how do you market yourself, meaning figuring out what kind of artist you are for promoters and everybody else that you send emails to. Then how to search for contacts and clubs, bars, and venues through personal contacts and internet search, as well as how early you should start sending emails and what else, and what to expect, of course. So if you haven't seen that one, maybe go back and check it out. I'm not saying whatever I'm going to tell you is a blueprint for touring musicians, but whoever does not have as much experience as I do might find this information quite useful. So this time it would probably be preparation number two, meaning volume 2, because you're still not on the road. Probably you sent a bunch of emails and still in the process, or maybe almost sent enough emails and got enough answers. So more or less your tour looks like it's going to happen, and it's not empty. Dates are quite full. But still, it's the first time for you, or maybe, I don't know how you've been in there before. Anyway, you don't have much experience, so what to expect is important. However, having a clear goal is really crucial. Now, what do I mean by a crucial goal, by a clear goal? Meaning, what do you want this tour for? Do you want to make money, or do you want to promote your music, maybe your new album, anything else? If you figure it out, you would not have this crazy expectations, and you would not be disappointed at the end very much. On the other hand, you also have to decide: are you going on tour by yourself or with your band? Some people just don't have any bands; they do this one-man band thing. And some people decide to go on tour as a duo. I've done it before. And there's a bicycle, hopefully it does not disturb you. And some people just go on tour with a full band. You have to consider difficulties that comes with unknown bands touring as a full band. Because if you're looking for opportunities to play, a lot of venues who possibly offer accommodation, among these other things, don't really have much space for, let's say, a 4-piece band. It's a lot easier to find a place to stay for one person, or maybe for a duo. And a lot of times you would probably have to look for accommodation by yourself, because not all the places gonna give you a room or maybe a couch to crash on. So it's important, especially if you go as a solo artist. It's pretty easy to manage because it's just you and you're your own boss, and you don't rely on anybody else but you. However, if the goal is to go on tour as a band, a lot of things have to be considered. How dedicated and invested are the members? Are all the members on the same page, and do they look in the same direction? Do they invest enough money on this trip? And everything else, managing egos, I don't know, there could be lots of issues. Let's say one person wants to spend all the money on the food and drinks, another person wants to save it up more to save some money also for the next week, or maybe merchandise. So make sure you have a great deal of discussion about the tour, and don't get any surprises on the road while you're already touring. And I would like to mention a few things about a budget, because your budget definitely is one of the key things to make sure your tour does not fail. What you're going to need money for, basically, can be divided in 3 or 4 things. Number one thing is, I guess, traveling, moving from point 1 to point B. Then there comes a place to stay and food. Those are just 3 basic things, and there comes some additional expenses and maybe some unplanned things, like, for example, guitar electronics broke down. Like, I've had this one time when my acoustic guitar pickup failed, like stopped working in Bratislava. So I had to find a luthier, not a luthier, but somebody like a specialist to fix it, and fortunately got it fixed. But anyway, things like that happen when you're on the road, especially if it's a long tour. But I don't recommend it for beginners. Maybe a few weeks would be enough. And when it comes to traveling, unless you have a car, public transport is what you rely on, and it's most likely going to be less expensive. It's not as convenient because sometimes certain trains and buses don't go to, from to all the places that you'd like, maybe to some small villages. But as for a beginner and people with not a lot of money, I'd say a public transport is probably a go-to. So what else? I was gonna say about food. Yeah, you might wanna stay on a healthy diet. However, I'd say you don't want to spend too much money on the food, and you don't necessarily have to eat really expensive fish fillet or things like that. I mean, you can deal with it wisely and decide what to eat and what to cut out for some time. But certainly not on alcohol. Drinking alcohol and spending money on it, you're going to get eventually some free drinks on the show. So this is not the thing. But the most expensive, in my opinion, is accommodation. Because from my experience, based on my experience, of course, there are certain distances that you cover, but public transport is going to cost a lot of money. But overall, I think hotels or hostels generally going to cost more than, for example, food. And make sure you just you don't rely on cash only, especially when it comes to booking hostels and hotels. And if you're traveling on a budget, probably gonna look for more hostels than hotels, and probably hostelworld.com and booking.com is gonna be your go-to websites in this case. And I've stayed in many of those places, and I've made that mistake before when I basically, when I was busking or playing bar shows and mostly getting paid in cash, didn't have any money on my bank account, and it caused me a lot of trouble finding a place to stay with my bandmate, because what happens is, if you have an experience of actually basically traveling, any place at least requires some kind of deposit, or most of them require some kind of deposit from bank accounts, and it's just a guarantee. So consider all those little details. I might have missed out on some things, but I don't want to make videos that are too long. However, just do not hesitate to throw some comments down below. Tell me what topics would you like me to cover, because I might just forget it. I'm just going impromptu, completely improvised. So I'll make sure to take it into consideration, whatever you ask me for, and keep making those videos. Maybe next video we could dedicate to packing, which means what can you take with you, what are the necessary things as a touring musician, and how can you travel as minimalistically as you can. Keep calm and play music.